Hey there, gamers. DreamcastGuy here. Today we're talking about the death of Bethesda because there has been a crazy interview by one of the main people at Bethesda, the guy who actually wrote pretty much every fantastic Bethesda game. We're talking literally the writer of Skyrim, literally the guy who's basically behind the best jokes and coolest satire in Fallout, the writer of Elder Scrolls. He has come out after 23 years and left Bethesda and basically said the studio is just gone inside. Apparently, they planned on making the Elder Scrolls 6 11 years ago, and instead they decided to waste time with stuff like Fallout 76 and Starfield. And I want to talk about this interview because a lot of people are really picking it apart and seeing this as such a sign about how bleak this industry is. With these crazy dev times, at this point, most of the AAA studios are putting out like one game a year at this point. And even when they do, it's like, oh, sorry, your game didn't sell 50 million copies. Your studio's just dead. And it sounds like Bethesda has just gotten lazy, so up their own ass, and just in general, it seems like they've forgotten what makes Bethesda games. And what's really weird, it's not even Xbox's fault for once. But let's talk. Hi, hope you're having a great day, and if you could please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, this was an extremely long, in-depth interview by Kurt Kuhlmann, by Kurt Kuhlmann, over here on PC Gamer, and I want to go through it, and I want to go through a bunch of the reactions. The entire internet, even Reddit, has just been freaking out about it because it is wild, but this dude is literally the lore master for Elder Scrolls. If you've ever had crazy cool stuff where you love all the elf wars, if you thought all the cool stuff about how trolls work and stuff, this is literally the guy. Now, you cannot undermine this. I feel like sometimes whenever there's like a big leak or a talk like this, people go, oh, it's just whatever series. Elder Scrolls, I feel like one of the things that makes Elder Scrolls the most crazy to me, especially Skyrim, especially, Morrowind, I think these games are so culturally deep. There's so much different rival factions and cool world building, and you can literally pick up every single book on the shelf and read pages and pages of histories and battles and wars and stuff like that, right? This guy cares more about a video game universe than maybe any other writer on the planet. And so because of it, apparently he was told specifically by Todd Howard for over a decade, you are going to be the director of Elder Scrolls 6. And it turned out Todd just lied. So this is it. Elder Scrolls 6 was supposed to be their next game after Fallout 4. You know, I was thinking about this yesterday, actually. Fallout 4 came out, 16 years ago? No, why am I saying that? It came out in 2015, so that came out 11 years ago. So 11 years ago, he said, yeah, that's going to be our next big project. Todd Howard promised him lead design role of Elder Scrolls 6, only to find out 11 years later, they went with someone else. So this confirms two things at once. It does confirm the fact that Elder Scrolls 6 is their next project, for whatever size, shape, or that finally ends up becoming. But to me, it is kind of just a signal about the fact that I do feel like as much as Todd Howard gets praised, at least in the past, it does feel like, I do feel like he has sort of a pro-corporate vibe now, where he's not about creatives figuring stuff out. It is really just, we're going to go with the safest choice possible. The vibe at Bethesda was very different after Skyrim's success. Kuhlmann was co-lead on Skyrim. This is something I have heard a lot. I don't want to leak specific names, specific studios, but something I have heard from a bunch of studios is that if you have a game that is a mega breakout success, you become essentially a cog in the corporate machine. That's just the way it works. I've heard stuff where like a guy whose job it is to design combat makes a game, it sells crazy game busters, and then you spend the next 10 years of your life in like weird democratized meetings where you're trying to like vote on game mechanics for the next game. You're like, well, we made that game by having fun, by being passionate, by doing daring ideas. Why now is it like creation by committee? This sounds like what happened at Bethesda. And what's interesting is that this isn't just because of the Microsoft acquisition. A lot of us kind of blame Microsoft is real bad about buying stuff and just instantly running into the ground. I mean, even Call of Duty, look at that. Jesus Christ, the sales are down by 60% instantly, right? But it also goes down to the fact that I do think that in a lot of ways, whenever studios get acquired, the out-facing PR is already so positive. It's instantly like, well, now we can just focus on the games. We don't have to worry about all those sales numbers. But it almost seems like Bethesda has this weird obsession with like trying to make the most perfect games of all time, and they end up putting out nothing in the process. Of course, after Fallout 4, we didn't do Elder Scrolls 6, we made Fallout 76, and even then, we didn't make the Elder Scrolls 6, we made Starfield, which became this extremely long project compared to the other ones. Now, I have seen a lot of reactions specifically about that. I love Starfield. There's no way in hell I would have asked for it over the Elder Scrolls 6. What did Todd mean by this? Anyways, I'm very sad that Kuhlmann left. Sounds like he wasn't treated very well, which stings even more. Bethesda keeps digging their hole, unfortunately. Look, even the biggest Starfield fan on the planet, even the biggest person on the planet thinks, wow, Starfield's got such good shipbuilding. It's so zen. I have one friend in real life, shout out to him if he sees this video. He has played hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of Starfield because he says it's so calming. He likes just flying around in a ship and like going against space pirates and stuff. But even then, I think he would even admit it's not a good Bethesda game. It doesn't have cool quests. It doesn't have cool, like, interesting, weird ideas or aliens and stuff. It's a boring, giant, empty sandbox. And they spent a decade purely on that big empty sandbox. The talk is they're trying to like rebuild Starfield and relaunch it like they did with Cyberpunk 2077, but I just don't think you can really go back to that well. Kuhlmann left Bethesda in 2023 after over 20 years. He says the problems at Bethesda predate the Microsoft acquisition, and as the years went on, design leads, including Todd Howard's role, became less hands-on and became more bureaucratic. His vision of Elder Scrolls 6 was going to be like the Empire Strikes Back. The Elven Supremacists were the bad guys, and they would ultimately come out on top, setting things up for the Elder Scrolls 7. Does not sound like the craziest thing ever. Look at this. This confirms that Elder Scrolls 6 was about the Thalmor winning, and Elder Scrolls 7 would have been about the game finishing the Thalmor story, the Second Great War. The Elder Scrolls as a franchise is so grossly mismanaged, and it's depressing to know that the Elder Scrolls 6 isn't even close to release. You know, maybe that's the craziest thing at all, right? This dude probably still did a ton of writing on Elder Scrolls 6, sort of setting up the world and the lore, being the lore master for decades and decades and decades. There's a good chance that when the Elder Scrolls 6 comes out, it's still maybe 5 years away. This stuff just takes too long in the oven. I almost feel like, look, you can say what you want about Skyrim. You can say that Skyrim has been re-released too many times. You could say Skyrim has been hyped too long. You could say that Skyrim's got a lot of quests that don't really need to be there, right? But undeniably, it is a big, complete world that they made on a very short deadline. Think about the fact that Bethesda, on just the Xbox 360, did Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, we had Elder Scrolls 4, and we had Skyrim. And all of them came out with DLC. All of them came out with complete features. All of them just came out back to back to back to back to back. And then once Skyrim came out, it almost felt like they just hit a wall. Like they just stopped making stuff for so dang long. I almost feel like that's part of the reason a lot of people really hate on Fallout 4. It's not that Fallout 4 is like the worst game ever, or even necessarily a bad Fallout, but after the heights of Skyrim and all the promise and potential and growth between those titles, you know, Fallout 4 kind of just seemed like a bit of a nothing game. And I feel like now, I almost think that in a lot of ways, I don't trust Bethesda to make a good Elder Scrolls 6 after how bad they bungled freaking Starfield. I mean, this is the Starfield studio, and they're still using the same engine. They still have a lot of the same team. What do you really expect? It's insane to think about the influence and hype of the Elder Scrolls games leading up to Skyrim, a game that has 25,000 active players daily, and Bethesda were like, let's not make another one of these for 14 years. I gotta admit that this interview to me feels very, very, very bleak, because I think it does signal that the problem inside of the game industry isn't just not enough budget. It's not enough timelines. It's not enough just raw potential. It's not enough hype. It's not enough work hours. It is just the fact that, honestly, this bureaucratic version of art, committee via creation, it's something that I feel like is killing some of the best ideas. I think that's part of the reason I'm so excited for Judas, the new project, obviously by the creator of BioShock, because he purposely took his favorite people that worked on the first 3 BioShock games, and he went and made a separate team, a tinier side studio. And Judas has taken a very, very long time to come out. Obviously, we still don't even have a release date, but I almost want to see what a creative person with a bunch of creative people locked in a room for 5 years, what they come up with more than the next big AAA crazy 400 giant empty skybox. I don't know. This has been some off-the-cuff thoughts. I'll be honest, I'm very sleep deprived. I was out till past 2 a.m. We ended up at a bar, and I think the bar was owned by like the Russian mob, and that's crazy. There were definitely a lot of Russian people there that looked kind of scary, and they kept giving us free drinks, so I just kept drinking. So I'm out of it. But hello, thank you for watching this video. If you could please give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming.
Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.